There's a lot of stuff that everybody believes about pricing that's wrong. There's
Yeah.
also such a thing as reassuringly expensive. In subjective spaces, people do not decide on price, they decide on trust. I trust
Yeah.
that you are gonna deliver this solution to me at this price, and it's gonna work for me.
Hmm.
And what I nobody wants to save money to get a bad result.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. I watched your TED Talk recently. It was really impressive.
Oh,
Like, was
that's
that in Columbus?
it was,
Okay.
yeah, a little over 10 years ago now.
Yeah. It had like 500,000 views, like 400,000 views.
Well, it depends on where you look at it, 'cause it's actually got about 3.5 million.
Oh my
On
God.
if you go to, like, TED.com and look at it, it's about 3.5 million there, and then another it's about 4.5 million if you combine the different platforms it's been viewed on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's interesting, it flowed along with, like, a couple hundred views, which probably 90% of them were my mom,
Yeah.
for I think it had, like, 2,500 views or something after 2 years, which I didn't do it with the idea that I was gonna go viral or something. I feel like I had a message that I wanted to share,
Yeah.
and so I was happy to have done it. I was proud of it. But then in, 2017, Wage Week, which is the week that, Wage Day is the day for which women finally catch up with how much money the men earned the year before,
Hmm.
and it's always in April or end of March. So we're
Okay.
starting in the hole. So Wage Week is sort of a thing that, is to try to generate a more visibility to the wage gap, gender wage gap. So TED for Wage Week picked that up and put it as their featured website on the homepage,
Oh
and it
yeah.
got 1 million views in a day, and
Yeah.
it was surreal, as you
Yeah.
can imagine. It was like, but and then since then it gets shared by TED on LinkedIn, usually about 4 or 5 times a year,
Hmm.
and then another big spike in views and another big spike in views. So
Yeah.
it's
That's, I
fun.
mean,
It's a
that's the
feather in
power
my
of,
cap. Yeah.
the power of content,
Yeah.
Um, I think and you look at like objectively, like a piece of content like that, it spikes emotion in people. Like people see a lot of their own story and their own insecurities, in that, and they can, directly address it. And you do a very good job of speaking to that and, all of your interviews and content. So,
Thanks.
in terms of communicating, the biggest thing you talked about in that one particularly was like communicating your value.
Mhm.
Why do you think it's so hard to do that? And a little bit of context is a lot of listeners are marketers, people who are either independent or in house.
Mhm.
So they're not working directly with sales. But even from both sides of the spectrum, just open ended question:
Yeah.
why is it so hard to communicate our own value?
Sure. Well, there's lots of things. There's a lot of answers to that, and I'll try to contain myself, but there's also some specific to marketers and creatives that I'll speak to as well. So sort of more generally, um, fear, first and foremost, right? We're afraid because what we're saying is, will you here's something I have that I want you to want it. I want you to value it. And none of us are wired for rejection. The negativity bias is I'm a kind of a brain science geek, and so the negativity bias is where we recall negative events with greater frequency and intensity than positive events. And so we can hear 10 yeses and then we hear a no. And we're like, that's all we think about.
Yeah.
It gives us it takes up disproportionate space in our brain.
Mhm.
So I think the sort of fear of rejection, I think there's also this like, I don't want to brag. I don't want to toot my own horn. I want to let the work speak for itself. I don't want to, the best reward is, just do good work and the rewards will come.
Mhm.
Um, I also think that people underestimate how important it is to communicate value.
Mhm.
They don't realize how necessary that is. Whether you're an employee in a company looking to be paid a salary that's fair for you, or you're somebody selling your services and products out in the world, the rewards will never come without it.
Mhm.
Not fully. Not
Yeah.
not in not commensurate with the value. The only way to get paid for the value is to be really clear on what value you deliver. And then very importantly, make sure the other person understands that.
Mm.
You can have the best product or service in the world. You'll never be paid what you're worth unless the other party understands that. It's like
Yeah.
having good stuff is half the battle.
Yep.
The other half the battle is communicating it.
Yeah.
And then specific to creatives, just to kind of close that loop, um, especially like so if you guys freelancers listening or people that are, they're marketers at heart, they are creatives at heart, and now they
Mhm.
have a business and they have to sell that. And for most people in that spot, The selling is the part they hate.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like if you called them a salesperson, they would feel insulted.
Yeah.
Like it's a dirty word. Like sales is gross, it's slimy, it's not
Mm,
the thing. It's the part I have to do so I can get back to the fun part, which is the marketing and the creative work.
yep. Mm,
And I think that framing is one of the reasons that people shortcut the effort to communicate the value because
mm,
it's so unpleasant and they see it as some sort of like smarmy exercise. But
mhm.
my definition of selling is very simple: making good information available to someone so they can make a prudent choice for themselves.
Yeah.
It's really about serving, not selling. It's about helping. It's about helping the other party get what they want.
Yeah.
It's not manipulation. It's not gross. It's
Mhm.
not greedy. And so I think for creatives, a lot of the obstacles are these self limiting beliefs we place around the entire sales
Mm,
journey. So, well, I don't know where this conversation's heading, but we're
yeah.
going to end up talking about belief a lot because I think that's the biggest problem for most folks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see it in even like my own. First of all, you're hitting on so many of my just getting started emotions. A lot of people take rejection. I think it's human nature. They take rejection too personally, especially when you are a smaller business, because you have experience on both sides. I'd be interested to kind of learn the differences. Is when you are smaller and you're doing a lot of it yourself, you take a no to the service, whatever you offer, as a no to yourself, like it's a personal
100%. It's
rejection.
also very different than like if I was a salesperson and my job were selling coffee mugs
Yeah.
and I said, "Let me tell you about this mug," and you say no, then it's like, okay, it's a repudiation of this product. It's
Hmm.
not a repudiation of me personally.
Hmm.
And so when you sell professional services and that service is largely self-performed, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't hear it's not worth it. We hear you're not worth it,
Yes.
which gets into personal
Yeah.
self-worth and a lot of really deep emotional stuff. And so it's just not a function of it seems on the surface like value for money. It should be pretty objective,
Hmm.
but there's so much subjectivity to it
Right.
because of how we feel about our own worth.
How do we objectify it more? I mean, I'll give a quick example is I was so deep in the taking rejection personally, especially when I first started, um, that my practice was to have, and I kind of phrased it into like a financial habit, but as creating as much objectivity around what you do and everything that surrounds it. So the context of um, having like some kind of a review habit where you view like profit and loss, like this is the business, like it's an objective thing
Hmm.
rather than this is, Andy on his laptop or whoever's freelancing or working, was a really productive habit because I could directly see just the objectivity of the business and detaching that from who I was as a person. It also goes into like your daily routines and habits, like showing up as a professional, like you are creating a business and you're living up to that.
Yeah,
If someone is maybe a little bit too invested in taking rejection personally, how
yeah.
can they objectify what they do from who they are a little bit better?
Sure. It's a great question. As you asked that, I thought of a resource and I'm happy to share it. Do you do show notes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I have a video that I created in response to uh, what's underlying your question, which is
Yeah.
something about like when we start a business and we start and we're not known yet and
Mm,
we're not established yet and we're trying to get started. There is a really common, I would call it a mistake, made by people in the startup phase, which is underpricing the work because they're just trying to get their name out there. They're just
yep.
trying to
Mm,
get some logos. They're just trying to, and what I believe, especially in sort of using the marketing space as the example, nobody goes out and starts a marketing firm because they don't know what they're doing and they have no marketing expertise and they
right.
have no creative talent.
Mm,
They've built a career, a body of work that gives them the confidence that this is something that they could bring to the marketplace. And so just because you just hung out your shingle 6 months ago, don't forget the years or decades that most people have spent before they start business. You are an uncommon exception to that. Most people wait a long time before they have the confidence to go out and do it. And then they discount their years of experience because they've only been in business a short time.
The website is live. Now is when the real work starts. While it's never been easier to build a website, the same is also true that it's never been harder to make a website actually work hard for you. Across our work on hundreds of projects and working with dozens of marketing teams, what we've found is that before we start, the website is often the slowest moving part, but that doesn't have to be the case. The moment your website launches is the best opportunity that you have to make it effective and drive marketing qualified leads month after month after month. What we find hilarious is that as marketers, we're so diligent on showing up every single day, always posting to social, making ourselves as visible as possible. And yet, our most visible and high converting, trust gaining asset sitting at the bottom of that funnel is maintained the least. Over the years with our website lead gen clients, we've culminated a premium tool stack that not only see who these high intent website visitors are, but we can also directly trace them to other marketing campaigns. Having a good website is the foundation for all of this opportunity. And if you're not investing marketing efforts into it month after month, your most profitable asset is being lazy. If spending time in the weeds, looking through data, and connecting these insights to the rest of your marketing is not your jam, if your website is being lazy, let's have a conversation.
And so and it tells the marketplace the quality of your work because you're cheap. So there's something called the price quality
Yeah.
effect,
Hmm.
which is where you infer quality from price. It's expensive, it must be good. It's cheap, it must be garbage. You'd never eat at a 99-cent all you can eat shrimp buffet,
Hmm.
right? So
Be
when
a bad
someone
decision.
makes a proposal, and this happened to us in our business. We were recently after some marketing support, and I won't go into what we were looking for, but we, put out this brief, got a bunch of quotes, and the woman that we liked the best was cheaper than everyone else by she was like 20% price of everyone else.
Hmm.
And I said,
Wow.
I don't think she can be any good.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't know if that's true. She might be phenomenal. And if
Hmm.
she listens to this, she'll probably, the next time we hire her, we did end up hiring her. And
Okay.
when we're done
Interesting.
working together, I'm
Interesting.
going to tell her, raise your prices. But it's a professional hazard for me. Everywhere I go, I leave higher prices in my wake, including with people that sell to me. So,
Yeah.
but it gave us pause. It really did. I'm not sure she can do what she says she can do because the price is too low.
Yeah.
And that is a real hazard for people in the early stage of their business who are using price as an inducement
Hmm.
for people to try them out and give them a shot.
Yeah.
So that was the answer to the question you didn't ask, but I think this is sort of foundational to what gets in our road sometimes, especially early in a business. So then, okay, now imagine we're a person and we're trying to bring objectivity to the game.
Hmm.
Objectivity is very helpful for substantiating your pricing. And there are types of work that lend themselves to that a lot. And I'll give you an example. My work. So we do pricing work with teams. We help sales teams by exposing the tactics customers use in negotiating against them, and then arm them with the methods and messaging and tools, and frankly, the confidence to go negotiate those deals and win more deals at higher prices. So if a company hires us and pays us X, and then their margins go up by 10X, that's a very easy objective thing to look
Right.
at,
And
right? And we have a lot of body of work to sort of this proof of this. We have our guarantee wrapped around the gains.
mhm.
That's a very objective thing. Now, there's a lot of subjective and, so I guess I would say, intangible benefits also that come from our work, but that's a really objective one.
Mhm.
Not every business lends itself to a calculation
Right.
or a straight line. If you do X, then Y will happen, and that is worth Z dollars.
Mhm.
If you've got any ability to do that, even through past case studies, even if you're not saying you're going to get 27% improvement, if you
Mhm.
can say, I worked with a client on this, and it will help lend objectivity and credibility to
Mhm.
your sales process if you can point to some tangible objective
Yeah,
results.
absolutely.
Uh, don't let the difficulty of doing that stop you from trying to speak to value, even if you can't be objective about it. And this is a
Yeah.
real big issue in creative spaces, because what's a what's a creative idea worth?
Mhm.
What's a new website worth? I mean, you can get websites for free,
Right.
and you can get websites for, I don't know, $500,000, probably more, and
Yeah,
everything in between. And so
exactly, yeah.
it is not standard, and that makes it really tricky. So it's very much about the story we tell and the context we set in the eyes of our prospects and customers about the value of this work.
Yeah, and that's our job within no matter what kind of business we run. Like, your job is to position yourself as close as you can to the outcome that they want, and
100%.
position yourself as the way to get there. I think you're 100% right in that there's different businesses that don't align themselves as well to that outcome, because just the way some businesses works out, they're further from the sale. But you have to position that in terms of the value that you offer, that you're the only and the best method to get there. I think
Absolutely.
case studies are a really good way to do that.
Testimonials,
And
other
so
kinds of social proof. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it's people don't see that as part of their jobs. Kind of what we talked about in the beginning is a lot of times they start because they like doing the act of it.
Yeah.
And the moment you create a business around what you do, you're now in charge of communicating the value of it. And
You're
that's
the
what a lot of people
salesperson,
skip
you're the
over.
finance person, you're the HR. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny to me about this in the creative space is that these are largely um, excellent storytellers,
Mhm.
excellent messengers, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that a lot of creative companies and creative individuals in like the freelance space are not doing a good enough job telling their own story of value.
Mhm.
It's sort of like the cobbler's son has no shoes,
Yeah.
like they're excellent at doing this for brands that hire them, but they aren't spending enough calories on that in their own business. And I think, sheepishness, fear, a little bit of embarrassment, a little discomfort, lack of understanding the importance of it, like some of the reasons we talked about before, but
Mhm.
they're delivering world-class work, but
Yeah.
they're not necessarily telling a world-class story about their work,
Mm.
and they're never gonna get world-class money
Yeah.
unless they do.
You see it all the time is that if you truly have it's so hard to see have the honest conversation with yourself is if you're truly the best solution for your potential client or the person that you're working with, it's now your duty to advocate for yourself because you're actually helping them. It's just the emotions and head trash you get around when you're the person involved. I think we talked about it when the first time we met of like how much easier it is to praise your friends or speak highly of your friends than it is like of yourself.
Yeah.
Like I think of my friend Chris, for example, whenever I loop him in on an email or referral, it's like, oh, you have to meet Chris. He's the most fantastic human ever. He knows everything. And then when someone turns the mic on me, I'm just like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
Well, this kinda loops back to something I said before, but around, like, I love that you said the word duty. I think we
mhm,
have a responsibility. I
yeah,
think if you're to sit down with a prospect and talk to them about what you do and they have a need that is you can solve it, you're the right person to solve it. If you don't do the adequate work of helping them understand why you're the best fit for them, then they won't hire you, which means
yeah,
they're gonna go try to figure it out on their own or hire somebody that isn't as good at solving this specific
yeah,
problem for this specific customer. So I think when people get uncomfortable around communicating value or selling themselves, quote unquote, the focus is in the wrong place.
mhm,
It's not about you.
yeah,
It's about them. And if we keep our focus on them, and I want to help them, and
mhm,
I see the problem they have, and I see that I have a solution for it that is exceptionally ideal for this,
mhm,
then I would say it's not serving them. It's almost selfish
yeah,
to let them walk out the door and not buy from you when you know you're the best to solve the problem.
exactly.
And so I think if anyone's listening and there's like this part of the job is so uncomfortable for them,
Mhm,
sit down for 5 minutes before you walk into your customer meeting and talk about like what's going to be good for this customer
mhm,
if we close this? How's this gonna help them?
yeah,
And you keep that sort of service orientation, and it's not about me and my discomfort and how I feel weird about this.
mhm,
It's about serving the other person, and I think that can keep you in a headspace that lends itself to communicating value, confidently.
yeah,
Not arrogantly, but confidently.
yeah. I think it works on both sides too. Like it's almost I've learned to go into meetings with the mindset that you really can't lose. Because either option A, if you do the diligence of learning about them and understanding their problems, if you make a referral to someone else, that almost paints you in a better, more credible light to them. And if you were to just recommend
Trust,
yourself,
absolutely. Currency with your referral partners,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's so much value in just having you keep that as a north star of solving their problems, even if I'm not the best person to do that. And I've seen even in calls too, like addressing that directly in the beginning, saying, "Hey, it's great to meet you guys. My goal for this is to understand your problems and get the solution, even if that's not with me. I know a ton of people in web XYZ." Um, and that's just, I think people approach, especially a lot of creatives or marketers, they get into like a scarcity mindset and that kind of sets them like two steps back in the beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas if you approach it with like, I'm genuinely trying to add value and not get to a desired outcome that you have beforehand,
Yeah.
just makes it flow like so much easier, you know?
We get attached to a sale, and especially in this sort of early stage of business, because every
Hmm.
sale is critical,
Right.
right? We're
Yeah.
all like, I've got rent and maybe I have a team to pay. I've got stuff to pay for. I
Right.
need this sale really badly. And that sort of stink of desperation can kill a sale faster than anything.
Hmm.
What is really important in sales is to show up as a peer. to the
Mhm.
person sitting across the table from you.
Yeah.
They want something and need something that you have. Now, it may or may not be a fit, and you're gonna figure that out together,
Mhm.
but if you come into a sales conversation like, "I need this person to say yes to me so badly," you're not sitting
Yeah.
there as a peer.
Yep.
You only appear if you have the walk away ability too, and walk away ability comes from authentically understanding their need,
Mhm.
authentically evaluating your solution against that need, and then being able to say, "Hey, I think this is a fit. Here's why. Here's one concern I have. Let's uncover if this is really a thing, because if not, then make me," or "I understand what you're telling me. That's not what we do," or "I
Mhm.
don't think we're world class at that. We stay in the blue part of our flame, and as
Yeah.
soon as it's outside of that, I have a partner I'd love for you to speak to." Like you
Mhm.
said, it builds trust,
Mhm.
but it also, and this is really hard in the early days because you wanna say yes to everything.
Right.
And I'm sure you have said yes to work that later we're like,
Yeah.
"Why
Yeah.
why," you
Yeah.
end up the amount of time and struggle and headache you pour into that project, you're like, "I'm working for minimum wage. What
Yeah.
have I done to my," and it's sometimes it's not work you're great at, you don't
Mhm.
enjoy, when you take on work that isn't a great fit, the client doesn't win and you don't win.
Right. It's
It's
resentment.
hard to
Yeah.
have discipline around this early
Mhm.
because, somebody's dangling a check in front of you and you need and want that check, but
Yeah.
every single time I have exercised the discipline to say no to the wrong work, it
Mhm.
has been a great benefit to the business, and not just on the emotional, but financially,
Yeah.
because it reserves organizational capacity for the right kind of work. And very often, those people say, "Well, thank you so much for being honest with me about
Mhm.
this. By the way, I have this guy who's in a mastermind with me who says he needs the exact," now they're
Yeah.
referring to you.
Yeah. Mm.
I also think sometimes they come back and say, "No, no, 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 no. Like, they start selling themselves to you,
Right.
like, why they're a good
Yeah.
fit for you. And
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
other times, those people come back 6 years later and say, "Hey, I remembered that conversation. Could
Mhm.
we reconnect? I have a new need." It's just so good for the business to say no to the
Right.
wrong work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's so good. I have stories on both sides of this, like very early on in my journey. And I've seen the downsides of not portraying your value accurately and the upsides of when you do. So I'll give like an example
Yeah.
on both sides and kind of have you pick apart. Um, it was right after I left the agency a little over 2 years ago. I was meeting like everyone. And I met a local freelancer who was a graphic designer, just purely graphic designer. And I was at a rate where I wasn't quite making what I was comfortable with. I was probably making like 5,000 a month or something like that. And I thought he could be a good referral partner. I was about 21 years old, 21 years old. And I went and met him in person, and the way he portrayed himself online was totally different than like the experience I got. 'Cause he was portraying himself as an agency, had a lot of past work, successful projects, and this sticks so strongly in my mind because it created one of those like those moments where I'm like, I'm not gonna let this happen to me. But when I went and met him, essentially we talked about like what his business model looked like, and I one way or another, he came to reveal that he charged $300 for his projects. 300. And I
For a
later in
project.
yes, per project. And I came to realize he's working at a factory. He has 5 kids and a team that he can't support, right? And I was like, if I'm going to do this thing and I don't accurately portray what I'm like, is my life going to look like that? This guy was overworked. He's unhappy, stressed out,
Broke.
wasn't able to bring good energy to the conversation. And I was like, I'm not going to let this happen to me.
Yeah.
Recently, about, not so recently, about 6, 12 months ago, I met Chris, who's the guy I mentioned earlier. I actually drove down to Atlanta to see him. He has been in the game for a while. Has like an enterprise, WordPress agency. He, this is the first exposure I got to someone who was valuing themselves and accurately portraying it. Like I come to find out he charges, 100 times what that project was worth. And when you have exposure on both sides, you start to see like, what's the difference between both of these people? Like maybe they have the same skill set. I mean, one of them surely isn't 100 times better at what they do, but it's just the mindset and the approach of what they do and the value that it holds, and just the moxie they have to then communicate it to the people that they're working with. I mean, I think when people work in a silo, like I see the first guy probably working in a silo, and he never had like those uncomfortable conversations where he just put himself out there and, it's like the gym. You're supposed to increase like your weight every single time. Just never got started doing that. And when you're not talking to people or seeing or like aware of your industry in terms of like knowing what your competitors are charging, um, I just have very emotional reactions because I was like, wow, like this is what I can make
Such a
happen.
contrast.
And like, I'm never going to let this happen.
Yeah.
So like when you talk about like some of the consulting that you do, are there any examples where people have seen maybe both sides or where you help them see what it looks like if they aren't accurately, you know, putting their best foot forward when it comes to communicating their value?
Yeah, I would say that's the journey virtually every one of our clients go through. Is this
Mhm.
one of the things that's interesting is that around pricing, and this is one of our challenges as a business, is sort of getting the word out about what we do, and
Right.
it's because the obstacle isn't lack of information; it's a belief. And so, if I line up 100 business owners and ask them about their pricing, and I say, okay, are you charging as much as you could? Most of them that believe that they are or close.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe, where they believe the range of possibility is not the truth, but they
Mhm.
have a blind spot about what's possible. And so I have to, before they can ever, agree to hand me any dollars, convince them that their blind spot is there and
Yeah.
that they have more upside than they think. And so, and then they trust us enough to hire us. And so if they're, let's say they're at X and they think they could get 10% above X, and they're excited about that, and the money works that if they pay us this, they're gonna get that, that's gonna work for them.
Mhm.
And then they get 40% above X or 100%. They don't know what they don't know about what's possible, and so seeing
Mhm.
that I kind of
Yeah.
relative to the examples you gave, which is like company A and company B.
Mhm.
Company A and company B are the same company in
Yeah.
my experience for what I'm describing, but they start
Mhm.
out as company A and they become company B. And what's really fun about that is not only the financial implications of it, which are extraordinary because all of our clients are small and medium sized privately held businesses.
Mhm.
There are 30 million small businesses in this country who
Yep.
employ half of America. And so when small businesses win, they share, they invest. They're hiring another person or they're giving raises or they're
Mhm.
paying out profit sharing or they're buying a piece of equipment, which now another business is impacted, right? There's this like
Mhm.
ecosystem of small business.
Yeah.
And when they're paying out profit sharing, now somebody's putting an extra house payment on their, or they're paying their daughter's college tuition. I mean, real human beings' lives are impacted by
Right.
this embracing of your value.
You're right. Mm.
And so that's the sort of the financial side of that and the impacts that are not just financial, they're really about an organization-wide ability to invest in human
Right.
beings, but there's also pride. And, um, and I don't take that lightly because to me, if you're excellent at what you do, you gotta be paid like you're excellent,
Yeah.
not like you're good, not like you're mediocre. And
Mhm.
there's too many businesses that are producing truly exceptional products and services, and they're
Mhm.
not being paid like that. And when they make that journey, and now they are being paid much closer to what they're really worth,
Mhm.
I always think there's more upside. But
Yeah.
let's say
Yeah.
they got close to the ceiling. There's a squaring of shoulders. There's a lifting of a chin,
Mhm.
there's a like the tail is no longer tucked between their legs. There's a real
Mhm.
pride. And I don't know Chris that you talk about here, but I mean, this is somebody who's embraced and stepped into and owned his value,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
there's a real emotional component of like, and I don't mean again, there's a spectrum from fear to arrogance, and
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle is confidence,
Mhm.
right? And confidence is what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
exciting
awesome.
to see it.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm um probably more dense than a lot of people. Maybe a trait of entrepreneurs, I don't know, but I'm someone who like very objectively has to see the inputs I've done to feel like I deserve anything. And if I mean, Hormozy says a thing where it's like create like an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And it's like that, like to me, I almost have to look back at my calendar, look back at their past projects, testimonials, and just remind myself of what I've done and the value that I've actually added. Because without it, I'll naturally slip into that conservative mindset of not communicating my value or proving what I'm worth. Do you think like part of your job sometimes when you consult with, bigger companies is just being a reminder that, hey, this is how much of a badass you actually are?
100%. So
Yeah.
my titles, pricing consultant or pricing speaker or whatever, but my
Mm.
real job is confidence coach.
Hmm.
It's like I'm an engineer by training, and
Yep.
I started my career in manufacturing facilities. And if you go out on the shop floor and you change the setting on a machine from 8 to 9 and you don't touch it for 6 months, when you come back, that machine's still on 9, right?
Hmm.
But human beings aren't like that.
Yeah.
because we slip. You've convinced yourself of value, and then X months go by. If you're not looking at that, if you're not doing the work, and for you, it's looking at these metrics, and
Mhm.
if you aren't investing in confidence, it slips. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons it slips is you're out there selling and communicating, and no one's ever like, "Oh my gosh, Andy, I thought this was going to be twice as expensive."
Yeah.
We get asymmetrical feedback about pricing.
Mhm.
We only get the half of the feedback, and it's not half, but the part of the feedback that is your price is too high,
Yeah.
right? Even sometimes you walk in the door and you say, "This is going to be," and I'm making up a number, $10,000 for this body of work.
Mhm.
It's like, "Oh, geez, our budget was 7,500." Now maybe their budget's 15,000,
Mhm.
but why not? Because it can't hurt to ask.
Right.
Because if I can get you to discount, that gives me a couple extra grand that I can spend on a new copy machine, or
Mhm.
whatever the heck I want to
Yeah,
invest in.
exactly.
So we get asymmetrical feedback. We only get the negative side of the feedback
Mhm.
about pricing, and some of it isn't even real.
Right.
Sometimes and I don't mean to suggest our customers are like a bunch of liars, or they are, they have low integrity. But, you know, I do this exercise when I do a keynote where I'll ask, how many of you have ever in your personal life walked into a store, or, maybe Facebook Marketplace or a garage sale or anything, and
Mhm.
offered less than was the price tag on the thing, and all the hands go
Mhm.
up. And then I say, okay, how many of you would have paid the price on the price tag if the other party said no?
Mhm.
Buying a car, whatever. And hands go up, and it's like, okay, and you are not terrible, awful, greedy, low integrity people. It's just what we do.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the human condition to try to hold on to our resources,
Mhm.
and so we employ these tactics. It stands to reason the customers employ them against us, so we're getting half the data, and half of that's wrong and bad and they're curating information for us.
Mhm.
What that means is we don't stay on 9, as a setting. We go back to 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 in
Mhm.
terms of our confidence.
Yeah.
So we never have to worry that we're going to, I've yet to see, people ask me a lot of times on podcasts or in conversation, how often do you see companies that are overpriced? And I can tell you confidently, I've never seen it. And I don't mean
Really.
there's not anywhere in any business that there couldn't be some tweaks made down that might have a benefit.
Mhm.
But as a rule, I've never seen, because you can't be in business.
Right.
Everybody's underpriced, at least in some areas of their business,
Mm.
and their large obstacle is the confidence,
Yeah.
and it erodes because of that asymmetrical feedback.
Mhm.
And we're so busy delivering an exceptional product or service that we're not investing in this part,
Mhm.
because this takes a lot of energy.
Right.
If you're really committed to world class, it takes
Mm.
a lot of energy. And
Yeah.
then especially if this is the part you love, it robs the energy you tend to put towards communicating value.
Yeah.
We've got to always be investing in confidence.
Yeah. I want to double click on a little bit of the psychology that I think you know a lot about, and I've heard you talk about in some of your past episodes. Is I a couple years ago I read a book called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Mhm.
I can't remember the author's name, but essentially like fallacies that we hold in our head that are just logically untrue.
Yeah.
One of them, and there's like 100 examples in the book, and it gives like an example and a short story about each of them. Um, One of them's called the house money fallacy. It's when you get something for free, you hold a lot, or for what you perceive to be free, because nothing's free. Um, is that you are much more loose with how you spend. It's the same way with like gambling, house money, exactly.
Right.
Um, is there any, and the example you just gave too, if someone were to say, "Oh, this thing cost $2,500," if I were in a pricing negotiation where if one of our clients we go from 20,000 to 17,500, I don't hold that 2,500 like in the exact same light. I feel the first one a lot more viscerally because it's isolated, right? How much of a role when it comes to like pricing discussions and negotiations does like context and like human psychology play into it?
Oh, that's a rich question. There's a lot to pull apart. So the short answer is tons,
Mhm.
right? Tons. I think if you ever look at an econ textbook, there's like a demand curve, right?
It's
And
been a while.
yeah, well, that's all right. I will paint the picture and you'll remember it, because lots of people haven't even taken an econ class, but everybody's familiar with the quote unquote law of supply and demand, right? And the demand curve is that if you charge more, you sell less, and if
Mhm.
you charge less, you sell more. And, one of my thinking fast and slow things, because there's a lot of stuff that everybody believes about pricing that's wrong.
Mhm.
And one of them is, if I charge less, I'll sell more. Um, and I could line up without thinking twice a dozen stories of the opposite being true. For a lot of reasons, one of which is the "it fits too cheap, it must not be any good," especially in professional
Yeah.
services. I had somebody in, a mastermind group I was part of a lot of years ago that had too much business, and he wanted to try to kind of pare down how much he was working,
Mhm.
and he had all these complicated strategies, and I said, "Raise your price."
Mhm.
And he said, "Yeah, I think that's it." So he was one of the I suggested, after we had this deep discussion about what he did and who he did it for and how many clients he had and all this stuff, I said, "Raise it by 100%. If you double your price, I think you'll lose this many clients, and here's the math. And you'll work less and you'll make a lot more."
Yeah.
And he was terrified because 100% is insane, which I
Mhm.
I understand.
Yeah.
He ended up raising it 50%.
Uh-huh.
He lost no clients.
Mm.
Now he's making a lot more money.
Mhm.
Didn't solve his production problem. So that's an exa in fact, he had now some new clients approaching him that were of a caliber he had never been able to break into before,
Mhm.
because now his price tag indicated to them a certain kind of
Yeah,
expertise, a
it's a
certain
signal.
quality. It's a signal of
Yeah.
quality, 100%.
Mhm.
There's such a thing as suspiciously cheap,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, what's wrong with
Exactly.
this?" There's
Yeah.
also such a thing as reassuringly expensive.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
so the
Yeah.
if we charge less, we'll sell more. It's not that there's no truth to it,
Mhm.
but it's this macroeconomic, law.
Mhm.
But when we're in a microeconomic situation, and it is Andy proposing work to Casey,
Mhm.
and there's people out there that do the same work, quote unquote, for less,
Mhm.
and there's people out there that do the same work for more.
Mhm.
That in subjective spaces, people do not decide on price; they decide on trust.
Mm.
I trust
Yeah.
that you are going to deliver this solution to me at this price, and it's going to work for me.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to save money to get a bad result.
Yeah.
Nobody,
Oh, yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
the idea that so and so is,
Mm.
you're quoting me 20 grand and this person's quoting me 16. Am I willing to save $4,000 to get a bad result? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
If we accept the truth of that, then the corollary must be true, which is they're willing to pay more for good.
Yeah. Well, they're
So
paying for the confidence too, like
that's
the
it.
the
It's
faith that
trust. It's
you're gonna
confidence.
deliver on it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that goes directly literally directly back into you have to be the one that gets them to that point. Like, have you given them everything that they need in order to have confidence in you?
Can we pull on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Let's
what
do
I
it.
see so much is telling people why they should trust
Mhm.
that. Like, we are trying to, especially in professional services, it's a bit different with product because you can, it's samples and
Right.
it's tensile strengths and whatever, right?
Mhm.
But in the services space, it's very hard to objectively compare two options.
Yeah.
You can look at portfolios, you can look a bit, but to know in your heart what you're going to get when you compare these two options is very, very difficult,
Mhm.
right? And so many people seek to establish authority by telling them, here's what we do, and here's how we do it, and here's our proven process, and we talk, 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 talk. The
Yeah.
best way to establish authority is listen. The best way to establish authority is ask questions.
Mhm.
Nobody will buy your solution until you've bought their problem.
Mhm.
And we jump too quickly to proving mode when really what we need to do is the best way to establish authority is to ask the question that nobody else is asking, to really pierce through the heart of the problem I have by saying, we worked with a client last year that came to us with a similar problem. What we uncovered for them is really this is going on. Is that
Mhm.
possible in your business? Super insightful questions are the best way to establish authority, not
Hmm.
let me give you a list of our logos that we've worked with and here's our portfolio and here's our process. Not that
Mhm.
that stuff isn't helpful too,
Yeah.
but establishing authority comes from listening and getting them talking about their problem.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh my god. Um, you're really you're really good at, like,
Well,
speed
thanks. I
communication.
love this stuff. I'm
Um,
a total geek for it, and I appreciate the
yeah.
chance to
No, I
come
can
on and
tell it's
have
genuine.
a platform for it.
It's really genuine. And that's why you made such a good point about, like, products versus services.
Mhm.
I think the best way I've found to better get out of my own head trash is, a combination of, like, focusing on the outcome rather than, like, your own process, like, turn the mic on them, what's their life gonna look like afterwards?
Right.
And also, like, itemization, because I think a lot of people who either work independent or they work in a non-objectified services space, um, listing like, itemizing what they do so that it's made aware to the other person, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, when we do web, you don't just get, like, a website, you get SEO, you get strategy, you get design, branding,
Yeah.
you get training and implementation and stuff like that. So, a lot of people don't give themselves and I just had a mentor tell me this recently, and I had a very visceral learning experience of doing it wrong. is you have to give yourself credit for what you do, but not be ostentatious about it. Um, I made the mistake of working in a silo with a bigger team, and I was doing work on the side, but I was not communicating with the stakeholder of saying, this is the work that has been done. This is how it aligns to our scope of work. Um, so a combination of both of those things, you have to give yourself credit for what you're doing
Yeah.
and communicating what's actually being done too. Communication is everything.
100%. There's such wisdom in what you said, that giving yourself credit. What I see so much with professional service providers is you have deep, deep expertise that you start to take for granted because you just
Mm,
know it. It's easy for you at this point. You've
yeah.
done it 1,000 times. This reminds me of a story of Pablo Picasso. He
Mhm.
was in a plaza sketching once upon a time. Woman recognized him and asked him to sketch her, and he says he will.
Yeah.
Dashes off a quick sketch, and she wants to buy it from him. She's amazed at how well he captured her spirit. And he says, "Yeah, 5,000 francs." And she's shocked. In fact, she's angry. She says,
Mhm.
"But sir, it took you 5 minutes." And he said, "No,
Yeah.
madam, it took me a lifetime." Now, why this is so important
Mm,
vis-a-vis the point you just made is we look at something and we're like, "Oh, that just takes me 5 minutes." Well, it takes you 5 minutes because you've done it 10,000 times before. Don't
mhm.
be tempted to underprice what's valuable to the customer just because it happens to be something that's easy or fast for you to produce.
Yeah.
Take them 10 times as long and be a tenth as good. Ditto, by the way, for your less qualified competition. It also reminds me, I'm a big fan of storytelling for
Mhm.
teaching
Yeah.
because versus like academic or esoteric description,
Mhm.
stories stick. And, I remember hearing a story of this old fish swimming along, sees these two young fish, and they're talking about the pretty fish they just saw on the other side of the pond. And the old fish swims by and says, "Hey, boys, how's the water?" And they look at each other and say, "What's water?"
Mhm.
Like, we are swimming around in the sea of our own excellence, and we are not aware of it.
Yeah.
We start taking it for granted. It doesn't look that special. And I think what you're talking about of really making explicit to the client the full gamut of all the value that you bring
Mhm.
is really important, and not to just slap out one word on it. I
Yeah.
even think, one of the offerings we have at our company is a workshop.
Mhm.
But we don't say, and it's over $10,000. Workshop $10,000 because somebody says, "Well, that's $2,500 per hour." But no,
Yeah.
no, no. This is the process, and it talks about the discovery and the tailoring and the data analysis and the workshop and the follow up, and this process makes it clear that they're not buying 4 hours of our time.
Mhm.
They're buying 25 years of curated experience packaged together so powerfully that in just 4 hours with your people, we can transform their belief such that you're making an extra $2 million this year.
Yeah.
If you don't want that $2 million, if that is not worth the 12,000 you give to us, then don't hire us. But you're
Mhm.
not buying 4 hours of our
Yeah.
time. And don't even get me started on the whole selling your time thing.
That's what I was about to say, hourly
Oh,
pricing.
I will
Yeah.
blow up. I've got more
Yeah.
more research for the show notes. I've got at
Yeah.
least 2 or 3 blogs I've written on it, at least 2 or 3 videos I've made about it because it is it is a killer for your profitability and for your value communication to
Yeah.
sell an hour of your time.
Yeah.
Please don't do it. Please
Yeah.
stop. Please stop it.
Yeah. The only time you should use, it's just in my experience,
Yeah.
and I'm learning, so you can like call me out. The only time I use time and any abstraction of providing value is like for internal like calculation
Oh, sure.
purposes in terms of
Sure.
like
It can be
scoping.
helpful to
Yeah.
making a decision around the price tag. I
Yeah.
also think there are times for customer facing, hourly or daily billing. I still don't love it, but sometimes if it's very, very difficult or impossible to get a scope
Hmm.
and you're going to be paid for the first phase of
Yeah.
something in and out as a to build a scope, right?
Yeah.
I think because for 99% of the time, I think a fixed fee approach is better for
Hmm.
professional services firms. And
100%.
I have a video that talks about the 12 reasons I believe that to be true. I
Yeah.
couldn't recall all of them right now, but a lot of reasons. But sometimes it's like nobody knows what the problem is yet, and they
Mhm.
just want you to help them figure it out. And even if you put a diagnosis phase and you put a fixed fee on it, you might end up finding that it's really insufficient. You've
Yeah.
worked for nothing.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to like create a frame of reference for the other person
Yeah.
who might not be in your industry. That's where it
Yeah.
goes back to like specialization. You can really add the most value you can to one specific customer. But a lot of times, like I remember when I first started, I was doing freelance work for like some kind of a research company, and like a lot of times they don't understand like the agency world and what goes into creative services. So if you say, okay, this is X amount of billable hours, but then tie that back to like a project rate,
Yeah.
they objectively can look at that. Like it's another one of the points in
Yeah.
Thinking Fast and Slow is when you see like a lot of landing pages, sales pages that have like an amount of hours that it took to do something, you automatically associate value to that because you're like, man, it took 99 hours to curate this file of all these resources.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's really valuable. So you can attach value to things that you objectively or can abstractly understand.
Yeah.
And that goes back to just communicating your own value in terms of what resonates most with whom you might be working with.
You can't get through a podcast in 2026 without talking about AI at some point, so this
Right.
is a good time to
Yeah. I
mention
was
it.
waiting on it.
The
Yeah.
role of the role of AI in
Mm.
this question of whether how much time is required to generate value, it's changing the math in
Yeah.
some industries, right?
Yep.
It may or may not change the value, but it changes the cost. It changes, and so billing by the hour or selling time, unless abstracted in the ways you've described, really is a cost plus approach.
Hmm.
I think this is gonna take me 10 hours and I'm gonna have to outsource this and that person's gonna have 4 hours and I've got my designer doing 6 hours and you add it
Hmm.
all up and you apply everybody's rate and all of a sudden it's so $22,000, right?
Yeah.
What happens when it takes half as long to do some pieces of that work? Does that make that not a $22,000 project,
Hmm.
right? And so I think this is another reason, and this is gonna change the game. It's already changing it, but
Hmm.
until it's changed, the degree to which we tie ourselves too much to time is going to make it really hard for us to sell an honest story to customers. And if there is nothing worse than breaking trust by misrepresenting your truth to your customers, because when they find out, trust is gained and drops and lost in buckets. So
Mm.
if you're going to use AI as a tool to build your work, the degree to which we're able to separate ourselves from time-based billing is essential to
Yeah.
both delivering the value, but doing so in a way that is actually respects the integrity of the work,
Hmm.
of the agreement with the customer.
100%. I think it goes back to, again, to communication. I mean, communication in some sense is everything, but if you're transparent around how you're using it to benefit your customers,
How it
if you're
helps
using
them.
AI to benefit your customers rather than using AI to substitute the work that you should be doing for them in the first place, you
Yeah.
don't communicate
Don't
that value to
cheat.
them. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't about getting away with something. I say this about everything
Right.
with sales. If your feeling is, I'm trying to see what I can get away with, or I'm trying to get them to do something counter to their own interest, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
is absolutely morally and commercially appropriate to charge high prices for the value that you deliver. There's the question of how do you communicate the value to, and even like, so sometimes people say, well, I've been billing by the hour forever. I
Hmm.
have a retainer model and it's based in dollar and many hours. And like,
Yeah.
how am I going to get the customer to go for this? And the answer is always, how do you message it such that it's a good thing for the customer?
Hmm.
How can the customer win? Because if it's about you winning, they don't care and
Yeah.
they shouldn't. How can they win?
Hmm.
And, one of the examples, this is one of my 12 reasons that I hate time and material billing,
Hmm.
is it hampers collaboration. Because if you're paying me by the hour and I want to get on the phone with you for an hour because I have this thing I want to understand better because I had this new idea about a campaign, but I need to understand that
Hmm.
you don't want to get on the phone with me for an hour
Right.
because you're like, I'm going to pay, I can't afford to be having, brainstorming chats with you. I need you working on campaigns.
Hmm.
But if you're paying me a fixed amount of money every month and I say, I have a really exciting idea for a new campaign, but I need to pick your brain about a few things. Can we get on the phone?
Hmm.
Now collaboration is supported, right?
Yeah.
And so that can be one of the stories you tell if you're making a switch from one model to the other is, I believe this is going to foster additional collaboration. I believe this is going to do this. You talk about the ways this can help
Yeah.
them, always in the language of the customer. And you've mentioned a
Hmm.
number of times, and I couldn't agree more, the importance of communication. I think getting pricing right is like half of that is the number. The other half is how you make people feel about it and the context you create around it, the messaging that supports it. Communication is everything.
Yeah. Well, that's so good. I mean, you're speaking like directly to my traditional Midwestern um background here
That's
is
another thing.
yeah.
I call it Midwest nice.
Yeah.
There is a weird truth I have seen
Mhm.
being in this space for 25 years.
Mhm.
This is a problem everywhere, but it's less of a problem on the coasts.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it
They
too.
they're
Yeah.
they're less shy about pointing at value.
Mhm.
You come in one state and the whole rest of the country has a lot more humility. And look, humility is a great thing. There's a lot of ways it helps business. It doesn't help us make more money though. And so humility over indexed costs you money.
Yeah.
And Midwesterners, oof, is a big. Every time we have a Midwestern client, we talk about the Midwest nice problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because you
mean,
can you can be humble
mhm.
and valuable and well paid. All those things are possible.
Mm. Yeah, what would you say to someone who maybe is um is stuck in the mindset of that problem. I mean, that was so visceral to me because even still talking about I come from a very traditional Midwestern family. Like
Yeah.
mother's a school teacher, librarian, father's a police chief. So you talk about like going and showing
Textbook.
up, yeah, working for the man, yeah.
Yeah.
I till this day, I am a black sheep when I go home, which I'm okay with. I always have been to some stretch of the imagination. But if you have like an entrepreneur bug and you're in a position to where like I just can't get out of this mindset of being overly nice and actually charging what I'm worth, what would you say to that person?
I think you gotta build some structures around yourself.
Mhm,
Like, discipline, and I know you're big on discipline and process and measures and, structures that will hold up habits. You can't if you're relying on your personality to change overnight, and all of a sudden you go from humble to confident bordering on braggadocious, or you go from being super service oriented to being a little more willing to protect your own bank account
mhm,
at the expense of not doing 77,000 extras for the client, right?
mhm,
You're not going to change overnight. You may
yeah,
never change. So what structures can you build around your habits? What structures can you build around your approach? And so and here's an example. There's lots of these. It
mhm,
depends on what the specific challenge is, but some people are really like, if I am face to face with you and I tell you this service costs $12,000 and you go, geez, Casey, we'd like to work with you, but I thought it was going to be a lot less than that. We could probably come up with 10, but I don't think there's any way we can do 12.
mhm,
If you are a person who knows yourself to be Midwest nice, never, ever, ever respond to that in the moment. Have a
mhm,
rule. I never, ever discount in the moment.
mhm,
I might discount later, but I'm not going to do it while I'm on the phone.
mhm,
I'm never gonna do that. So have a
okay,
phrase that you say when somebody says that, like, "Andy, I understand your budget is lower than what I've proposed. Um, with your permission, I'd like to kinda go away and come back to you, perhaps with a set of questions, that'll allow me to rescope this in a way that meets your budget and still delivers on the promise. Is that fair? Can I
mhm,
come back to you? Can we set a call a week from today? Or can I come back to you with an email?" Or give yourself an out that says, "My rule is I am never gonna respond to price pressure in the moment if I
mhm,
know I'm a Midwest nice,
yeah,
victim."
mhm,
Give yourself a structure. And then that way, when you're away from it and you're not in the emotional moment, you've got the dispassionate distance to be able to say, okay, what questions do I need to go back and ask this guy?
mhm,
What could I de-scope or reframe about this such that I can meet the budget? That's one example of a rule you can set for yourself.
mhm,
But I would say
that's
structures
a good
help
one.
us from caving.
Yeah, I think there's an acknowledgement, and I always make like gym analogies because I'm like maybe not as smart as a lot of people, and that's just what creates resonance with me. It was like if you can acknowledge beforehand, like this is a potentially uncomfortable conversation. It might be contrary to what is comfortable in the moment, like doing a Murph or something like that
Yeah.
in CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like this is gonna suck. But if I can just suck it up for these next 30 minutes and just say the hard thing, I'm not gonna bear this. My team's not gonna bear this down the line. And I think as I specifically like progress in business, that becomes what discomfort looks like. That becomes the hard thing rather than the staying up all night and
Doing
not
the
that I do
work.
that,
Yeah.
but like the tactical work that actually worked when you first started. Like what gets you here doesn't get you there.
Mm,
I think there's so much to that. One thing you did, what you said, I did want to kind of double click on is like the. Do you think there's ever I think when you talk like money and pricing, it's always going to be emotional or some kind of there's so much tied to it, I feel like. And it's different with everybody. But do you think there's ever value in just saying objectively, like, hey, I think there is, because it's how I have approached it in the past, is like, I understand the budget. I have to just tell you, like, when it comes back to our team, like, this is what I'm working with. And no, I'm not putting on a front here. I
yeah.
think there might always be some, extent to that. We just say, like, hey, in order to make this profitable for our business, maybe more in a B2B context, this makes sense.
Yeah.
This is what I'm working with. Um, and just communicating what goes on more on your side. Or do you find that to be maybe too much information and it's not your job to bring that up?
Well, I think at the end of the day, what it takes you to deliver the work is a function of your cost. And I don't just mean your financial cost. It could be
Hmm.
your time, could be whatever. Like what it takes your company to deliver it is your cost. What they pay is the price. If you tie the price too closely to the cost, you're going to struggle to be paid what you're worth because
Hmm.
cost doesn't drive price, only value does.
Mm. Yeah.
Cost does not drive price, only value.
Yeah. There's good
Because
talent.
it is very common, and I'm not suggesting there's never a time to offer a glimpse into some transparency around this,
Hmm.
such that it helps you bolster
The
this.
trust. Yeah.
But if we just had a conversation about the importance of abstracting your time because that is going to cause you to get underpaid. And so it's almost like a step back in that direction a little bit.
Hmm.
Is it okay with you if I go back to something you said right before you asked that question, where
Yeah.
you were
Go for it.
talking about the hard thing and the MRF and the
Hmm.
discomfort? I think this is so important because one of the biggest obstacles to getting paid what you're worth is the willingness to be uncomfortable in the moment and to say a big number,
Yeah.
right? Or what we perceive as a big number. And I would say, as an entrepreneur or a person selling services or products, you have a choice between discomfort and being underpaid.
Mm.
And this is, it's a little where I thought actually we were going first when you brought up house money. There's a status quo bias,
Hmm.
right? Like the idea sometimes that people are like, I'm afraid to raise my rates because if I do, I might lose business. I might lose customers. So they're cognizant of a possible risk of change,
Hmm.
but they are not present to the risk that they are already living out,
Hmm.
which is getting underpaid.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is this risk versus no risk. No, 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 no. It's this risk of change versus the risk of staying the same. And
Yeah.
the risk of staying the same is I will continue to be underpaid substantially.
Yeah. Well, the
And so
associated pain too, like again, like a food analogy too. It's like it's comfortable in the moment, like oh, it feels good, but then it
the
manifests.
cost,
Yeah,
the
the
cost of
cost
that,
it
right?
manifests itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is it costing you to be underpaid?
Yeah.
And a lot of times you say, okay, what if in your business through making these changes and asking for this and getting it,
Hmm.
you had an extra 80 grand available in your business this year? What
Hmm.
would you do with it? And you start to like, the
Hmm.
idea is raising the stakes on the possibilities.
Yeah.
It's like, because you can choose comfort over hiring the next person on your team.
Hmm.
You can choose that. But if it's comfort versus discomfort, I'll always choose comfort.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. We're not aware enough of the cost of that choice.
Hmm.
Choosing comfort versus discomfort. No, no, no. We're going to choose discomfort or short on resources.
Hmm.
Now all of a sudden I might be more willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then I think there's some things we can do around the comfort problem, right?
Hmm.
So what is the zip code of that you live in, Andy?
43072.
That's too high. You laugh. It's ridiculous. It's a
Yeah.
ridiculous, like nobody's zip code is too high or too low. You didn't have an emotional reaction to telling me
Yeah.
that number. You didn't think, maybe I should knock it down to start with a 3, right? Like you don't care, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, I am not suggesting that anybody, including me, who's pretty comfortable talking about price, is ever going to get to the point where we say a number and we have no emotion tied to it.
Mm.
But if how comfortable you were telling me your zip code is one end of the spectrum, and the other is I'm so terrified of it, I am going to negotiate the number against myself and
Mhm.
present a lower number out of fear before I ever get there.
Yeah.
There's room to move in that direction. And so I
Mhm.
think and to use a gym analogy,
Interesting.
getting in the reps, right? Like
Mhm.
stuff is hard and then you do it over and over and it gets easier,
Mhm.
right? So if I always say, like, somebody said, how do I pick the right price? And there's that we could have a whole episode on that. But
Yeah.
whatever number they're at, I say, okay, I think I could charge $3,000 for this. I say, okay, what number is pretty terrifying to you,
Mhm.
but you think you could still maybe fall asleep
Mhm.
tonight? You could put your head on the pillow and go to sleep, but it still scares the heck out of you.
Yeah.
4,500. Okay, that's the number,
Mhm.
right? Like you want to be, if you're not scared, you're over here in comfort. You're over here living out the risk of the underpaid. So,
Mhm.
and then you say 4,500 and the client says yes.
Mhm.
And you say 4,500 again and the client says yes. And you say 4,500 and they say no because it's, you don't win 100% of the, by the way, if you're winning 100% of your deals, you're definitely underpriced,
Yes.
right?
100%.
So you need to lose some. But you win 4 out of 5 deals at 4,500, all of a sudden that's your new standard price because the market has told you it's worth it.
Yeah.
And then guess what? 6 months later, maybe you're ready to go for 55.
Yeah. I
Right.
think it's like that combination of gradual reinforcement when it comes to raising your rates, charging what you were.
Right. Because we're resetting belief.
Right. Exactly. And also like the combination of that and the acknowledgement of like objectifying the down. So have you ever heard of Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, of course.
He has like this fear setting thing that I try and do like as much as possible. It's basically an exercise of like taking yourself through the worst possible outcome of the scenario, and you get to it and you realize like, oh, it's not that bad. So
I think we talked about this in our first,
Yeah,
that book, that
yeah.
chapter of that book was what finally caused me to start my business.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Well, we're birds of a feather then. But yeah, it's like the the it's just if the discomfort is just a signal that you're doing the right thing
Yeah,
usually. Um, and that's just something that you have to lean into. It's just so contrary to human nature a lot of the times. But if you can like objectify what the downsides of what you're about to do is, if you like, if okay, if they say no, like what's going to happen? Like, oh, now you learned. You
right.
can readjust that pricing next time. You can run an assessment. Say maybe given their budget and just the details of the project, I know not to do that next time.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe just wasn't the right person to begin with. So
I think there's the reality is though, when we're afraid, the amygdala is in charge, right?
mm,
Not our neocortex. This is the neocortex is the logical, rational decision making, part of our
yeah.
brain. The amygdala is the thing that causes us to fight or flight, kept us alive for all of human history. That's what gets activated when we're afraid. And
Mm,
so when somebody, when we're if I say like, "Oh, what about 4,500 instead of 3,000?" and the person immediate reaction is fear, and the first time they're ready to say it to another person, they're going to feel afraid.
mm,
Our amygdala is not sophisticated enough to think that what the fear is that they're gonna say no, and then I'm gonna have to we're afraid like we're afraid for our lives. Like,
mm,
this is why I'm such a brain science geek, because it's actually and why Tim Ferriss's approach around naming the worst fear is so powerful, because what we're
mhm,
doing is name it to tame it, right? We're naming the fear. We're getting very, very and get uber specific. Okay, they're gonna say no. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean about me? What
mhm,
does that mean? What financial implications does it have? Like, mapping out and naming in with great specificity the downside
mm,
can help us from going into fight or flight. Because in fight or flight, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, I guess I can do it for 3,000. I guess I can
yeah,
do it for 2,500. And then we get home and we're like, why did I do
yeah.
that?
That and also like the contrary. So like objectify the upsides. Like
What is
what?
possible if
Yeah.
yeah,
Like what would?
now I can afford to hire another person or
Yes.
whatever.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I started doing recently. Was I didn't like flip it to the other side. Now I'm seeing like, okay, if I meet the revenue goals for this quarter, I'll be able to move to Columbus, so my ass doesn't have to drive an hour and a half. Once you like put those
Yeah.
like you hold those things so closely to you, a lot of things I think we just get too separated
Yeah.
from, the outcomes of our actions.
We're talking about sort of casting ourselves in the future
Yeah.
in both scenarios.
Mm,
What is the bad? What is all the what the power in this? If you say, okay, I have a sales call this afternoon,
mm,
and the power. What we're talking about here to me is the power of preparation,
mm,
because it is very, very common. People do not prepare for sales calls,
mhm,
meaning because they quote unquote don't have to. They already know their products and services. They get into a conversation like they've done it a million times, right?
mhm,
But you get into a sales conversation that you haven't prepared for by saying like, here's you kind of playing out two possible scenarios. I'm
mhm,
casting yourself into the future and making real for yourself the stakes of the wrong side of this, and making real for yourself the upside of the possibility of this. But also, another way to stay out of the fear center, the amygdala, is to prepare for what could go wrong in the call. Like, what are the objections they could raise?
mhm.
What do I hope against hope they don't say to me?
Yeah.
What do I hope against hope they don't ask me? And spending some effort on that and
Mhm,
putting some work into, like, they might say, they've got a lower quote. What am I going to say if they say that? They might say, our existing provider, does SEO and you guys don't do SEO, whatever.
mhm,
Like, what are all the things that might happen?
mhm.
And you prepare. And this, I'm not talking about you have to spend 6 hours. I'm saying you could spend 10 minutes
Yeah.
mentally preparing for that conversation and what different directions it might go.
Mhm,
Why this is so helpful is in the moment when you say the thing to me, you say, well, our existing provider is $2,000 less a month.
mhm.
I've already thought that through.
Yeah.
I've already prepared for that. I already have, and that allows me to stay in the neocortex, not in the
Yeah.
amygdala. It allows me to regulate my neurochemistry and stay present to the conversation.
Mhm,
Because if we're operating in fear, I'm no longer even listening to you,
mhm,
honestly. I'm just scrambling in here trying to stay alive.
mhm.
And you're sitting there telling me, well, we're going to do another project next year. And so this is really important to me. That I didn't even hear that,
Yeah.
but if we stay present and we stay grounded in our preparation, it's like, oh, well, tell me more about that project, because I want to make sure that what we're doing today sets you up for that work. We can do a lot of things now that are going to save you a lot of money later.
Mhm.
You can't have that conversation if you're
Yeah.
scrambling around in your own brain.
Yeah, it's so good. That when it comes to preparation, like, I think people are the victim of both over and under preparing sometimes, and I think I've been on both sides. Is like even like for the podcast, I would be like, okay, I want to memorize every date in this person's life. Whereas now that's not what's important,
Yeah,
that's not what they care. What
yeah,
the research should be spent on understanding what's most important to them.
yeah,
And that informs the questions that you ask, that informs how you frame the episode, that informs the whole experience rather than saying, okay, I want to know like a very detailed story that no one else knows about, and I want to get a really good reaction from them.
yeah.
I think there's value to that in some circumstances, but I think people misallocate their preparation time in sales and in any conversation, um, in terms of like how can I make this better for me rather than how can I make it better for the other person.
I
That's
think
where
you're
you should.
right. I think the anatomy of the preparation is wrong in some cases,
Yeah.
but I think the greatest sin, if it is it were, is under preparing. So
Yeah.
lack of like zero preparation or too little preparation is a bigger problem than I prepared wrong. I would rather see people prepare wrong and at least prepare.
Hmm.
I think especially as it pertains to sales, especially when you as a seller know your product or service inside and out and upside down, you think, what the heck preparation I need to do?
Yeah.
But like, specific to this business, specific to this customer, specific to what they said they needed, and you can't know everything because you're going into a sales call. You're going to learn in the sales call.
Hmm.
But the degree to which you can prepare for, like, which are the ways this might go? What am I going to say? What is my opening line? What do I want to have happen? These are really helpful for staying calm in the moment,
Yeah.
which, especially as we're kind of talking about in this sort of marketing, for a lot of the folks that listen to this marketing space, maybe a, maybe a graphic artist freelancer, right? Like
Hmm.
that selling part isn't the comfortable part, isn't the fun part. So spending a little time getting ready to have that conversation from a place of equanimity and sort of emotional regulation. I think, when we talked before about the man curve, right? You sell less if you charge more, you sell more if you charge less. It looks
Hmm.
like this simple clinical mathematical relationship between price and volume, but it's not how it is in the real world.
Hmm.
It's emotional, it's gray, it's nuanced, it's more like poker.
Hmm.
I'm trying to guess at the strength of my or guess at the strength of your hand while I look at my hand. I'm
Hmm.
bluffing. Buyers try to hide how much they're willing to pay. Sellers are trying to hide how little they're willing to accept.
Yeah.
So and pricing is like poker. It's like the hand if you're a student of the game of poker, the cards you're dealt is only half the game. The other
Hmm.
half is how you play it. And I think this is very much the same with respect to our products and services. Like our products and services are the hand we're dealt. I mean, we built the
Yeah.
hand, but it's how we play the game that determines how much money we get paid.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That kind of goes back to the psychology pieces. Um, I had a very recent example too of how how we can't attach that same the poker example, but also like you can't attach the same emotional weight to numbers in different contexts. So I had a moment where I folded for lack of better terms, and it went from 20 to 15, and I just thought afterwards, I was like, if I were to just go out and lose $5,000, I would be heartbroken right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel nearly that bad. I was like, oh, still, whew, like we got it. Um, and I just, it's one of those things you just regret it and you think way, way too long about it afterwards.
Well, you think about
Um,
if you needed something for your business, whatever, like
yeah.
some service that you want, and you interviewed some companies and you got a bunch of different proposals and you had to spend 5 grand to solve that problem.
Hmm.
How careful would you be about spending 5 grand? Pretty careful.
Yeah.
You're not just writing a check in the stroke of 2 seconds, but we will discount 5 grand in the
Yeah.
stroke of 2 seconds. I think we place, and it's that house money thing. Like
Yeah.
it's money I don't already have. And so people tell themselves 100% of 15 grand is better than 0% of
Don't already
20.
have. Yeah.
And that is true. That maths. The problem is that's under the assumption that you can't get the 20 grand.
Right.
And very often we can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. Um, I wanna land the plane a little bit by kind of focusing on we went straight into like what you do and not so much who you are. Um, but what are some of the things that excite you like as a founder in your own business? And what's getting you out of bed
Yeah.
nowadays?
Thanks for asking that.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, so for me, this is mission driven work.
Hmm.
And it goes back, we hinted at this earlier in the conversation. If you're excellent at what you do, you ought to be paid like you're excellent. And
Yeah.
the idea that so many businesses churning out truly exceptional quality are not getting paid for that exceptional work fully, um, to me, is an injustice.
Hmm.
It's an injustice because some money that belongs to you is sitting in somebody else's bank account,
Mm.
which means you can't do the good that is possible in the world from Andy Milligan
Mm.
because you don't have as many resources as you deserve.
Yeah.
So your money sitting over there, you can't do the good with it. And this makes me fired up.
Mhm.
Makes me crazy. It gets me out of bed. It puts me on the, I'm going to Dallas next week to speak, and I'll be in Orlando a couple weeks after that, and I'll be in can't remember the name of the city for that
Man,
one conference.
oh my
And
god.
I do this over and over again because I stare out into the audiences and I'm sitting looking at you and stare in the eyes of men and women every day who pour their hearts out for quality and service and excellence, and seeing that go under rewarded drives me crazy. It's one of the reasons I leave higher prices in my wake, including with my own providers. I get a haircut, guys cut my hair. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a pricing consultant. Never heard of that. What's that all about? I have
Mhm.
people get paid well for excellence. Neat. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Next haircut cost me $5 more, like
Yeah.
because if you're great,
It's like, damn
yeah,
it.
yeah, oh yeah. I need to my furnace broke a couple weeks ago, and some guy was over and he was writing up a quote for me. He's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'll tell you after. Like I cannot tell people what I do at the beginning.
Yeah.
But but at the end of the day, like that it's just I'm from my dad's a truck driver.
Mhm.
My mom stayed at home with us, later went back to school and became a school teacher. I'm also from the
Mhm.
Midwest. We got some
Yeah.
similarities. And you know, I I remember the first time that I quoted a price. The most money my dad ever made in his life in a year was $32,000. Right?
Holy shit, yeah.
And we were broke as a joke, and never homeless, never hungry, but close on both accounts. And
Mhm.
and I remember the first time I quoted a project over that amount.
Yeah.
And I'm a quote unquote expert in this, right? But my heart was in my throat. My stomach hurt. My face was flush. I was feeling so much fear.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and the value is there. I talk about this even in the TED Talk that you mentioned, like this,
Mhm.
like the difficulty we have to unwind. And I'm very trained in this space, and I know pricing and I know pricing psychology, and still it comes up. So feeling fear is normal and natural. It's just a terrible reason not to get paid what you're worth.
Mhm.
So that's my driving force, as I see all this excellence. And a passion project for me is early stage entrepreneurs and startups and solopreneurs,
Mhm.
which almost always is service providers. People aren't running a manufacturing shop with one person, right? So you got service providers selling their own expertise, dealing with all that rejection stuff and that
Mhm.
inferiority complex, imposter syndrome, humility, all kinds of stuff that comes up. And I just want to see them win
Mhm.
because they deserve to win. And very often, the difference between surviving and thriving is getting paid for it.
Mhm.
And it's not lack of skill. It's usually a lack of confidence, and there's a set of beliefs. And so with small changes in belief, you can all of a sudden have an extra 80 grand this year, move to Columbus, do 17 other things you want to do. It's really exciting to me.
Mhm.
It's really exciting.
God, that's so good. So good. So if people are listening,
Mhm.
and they're,
If they haven't given up by now,
they're
like,
hot.
she's a woman will not stop talking about pricing confidence.
No, not yet. But if they're hot on their heels, they're like,
Mhm.
man, how can I get in touch with Casey?
Sure.
Where should they go?
Sure. So we have a few different. I have a few different answers for this, depending on who you are. So
Mhm.
most of our work at Boost Pricing, Boost Pricing is the company that I founded that works with sales teams.
Mhm.
So if you have a team of 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 30 salespeople that work for you, and you say, "My gosh, my sales team really needs some confidence. There's too much negotiating against themselves. There's too much folding. There's too much." Then you can contact us at Boost Pricing, and you can. That's info at Boost Pricing, or you can go to our website, boostpricing.com. That's Boost, like the energy drink, pricing.com. We also have a ton of free resources out there. So I write a blog. I make a lot of videos. I post all the podcast episodes that I appear on out there. So we've got some calculators and all kinds of free tools. So that's a great place to go. I also do speaking. So if you say, hey, I would really love to see her at this conference I'm on the programming committee for, you can find all my speaking stuff at caseybrown.com, CASEY Brown.com. And then I also put a bunch of stuff out on LinkedIn. That's a good place to connect. I accept all connection requests, whether I know you or not, even though LinkedIn tells me not to do that. And I put out a lot of videos and content there, and I really love to interact with the business community there. So basically, also have a book called Fearless
Mhm.
Pricing, and so you can get a Kindle version for under $10. So I want to help everyone, regardless of their price points. So we have stuff for free, all the way up to our team programs and everything in between.